So it's a very sad Saturday. It is my birthday. I was born several years ago, and although I said Saturday you're not allowed to mourn, according to Jewish tradition, Saturday is a day, like if you're sitting Shiva, which is the mourner's time, 7 days, you cannot mourn on a Saturday. You're not allowed to mourn. So I want to say something about what's happening here in Israel, about the hostages, because not everybody is informed, and my purpose is to educate. So let me tell you what happened on October 7th. I woke up to a very loud sound at around 7 a.m. I thought it was a thunderstorm. Turned out to be a rocket that fell very near my home. Could have been in my home, could have been, but wasn't. And started this mad events of news coming in that terrorists invaded Israel. We have one of the strongest army in the world, so understand how shocked everybody is, thinking we have the strongest army. The weekend newspapers were busy with the October War 1973, when I recall watching the war on TV from the US, where my father worked, bringing money and people to Israel, and also hasbara, explaining Israel's position. And he was a very good talker. I'm not a very good talker. I'm too emotional. My father was emotional, zichrono livracha, but he could speak. He knew how to talk to people. I'm not very good. I'm better with animals and children. So anyway, I was teaching in an area that was hit by rockets a lot. They closed the school. I had to teach from a computer. I found out I didn't have internet because of the electricity that wasn't fixed properly. And I had to fix that. I had to find an electrician who would come in and fix my electricity so I could teach from home. I went to a bomb shelter and I taught from there. Oops. And then it was just a spiral of events that it's hard to comprehend how we survived. Rockets, sirens, going to bomb shelters, fear to take a shower, anxiety levels that were skyrocketing. A rocket above my head when I was on a bus coming from outside of Tel Aviv, so I had to lay in the grass, on the ground, clutching to a person I don't even know, praying Shema Yisrael really loud. There was like a very, very, life-changing moments when you say, what do you have in such a time when the rockets are above your head and you could die any minute now. The rocket can fall, the pieces of the rocket, the shrapnels can kill you. You can die a terrible death. And yet, the world is celebrating. And in New York, in the place where I lived, and there's so many Jewish people, Jews are being targeted. And all the evilness, the Pandora box of evil came out. One of the kidnapped people that stood out was a family with 2 ginger-haired, a baby and a toddler, the Bibas family. Now what comes out now that we know is that they were kidnapped not by the terrorist organization. There are a few terrorist organizations. I educated myself according to their bandana. Green is Hamas, then there's Daesh, which is ISIS, and then there's Fatah. They're all the same, jihadists, Satan cult murderers who target Jews, and they call Jews Nazis. They go according to the Orwell. George Orwell wrote a book, and where he says, truth is a lie, lie is the truth. The times where people are confused about what is wrong and what is right, what is truth and what is lies. These are the times where these dynamic beings flourish. So all over the free world, Sweden, which has nothing to do with the Middle East. Swedish people are demonstrating for the poor people of Gaza. Meanwhile, these poor people of Gaza come into their neighbors' homes and drag a woman and her baby and her child. Yes, civilians did it. Civilian people took her. First, they murdered her parents. They shot the dog, the family dog. The father who was defending his children, they took away so he couldn't defend his family. Imagine having to live with the idea that you cannot defend your own family. And of course in Israel, something rotten in the state of Israel, why did these people have no weapons? Why didn't they have guard duty? As a former, yes, I was a soldier in the IDF, not a very high-ranking soldier, very simple, but I learned how to use a gun. I knew how to defend myself, and yet, these people had no guns. They lived like a few kilometers from Gaza, and there's Oded Lifshitz, an 83-year-old great-grandfather who dedicated himself to helping people from Gaza. He would make sure the people from Gaza could get to medical help. Took them to hospitals in Israel. And Israel allowed this, of course, because we have mercy and compassion. And yet, they took this merciful and compassionate neighbors and they had no problem murdering him, even though he was pro-Palestinian rights, more than anyone in New York. They murdered him in cold blood and left his body as a bargaining chip. The same thing with these poor children. We went and I took my dog to the hostage square for every event for the Bibi's boys, for the Biba's boys. We went and we sang and we made videos hoping they'll release them. Meanwhile, there were all those 16 months dead, including their mother, Shiri. Not only did they murder them in cold blood with their bare hands, because you can find that out from forensic evidence, they murdered them with their bare hands. They desecrated their bodies. And then they say, Allah Akbar. Now God, no religion in the world calls for murdering a child or desecrating their bodies like that. Islam comes from Judaism. Christianity comes from Judaism. All monotheistic religions come from Abrahamic religions. This is not a religion. This is not territorial dispute. How many videos on YouTube can explain and educate it about the history of this so-called conflict, when it isn't a conflict, but an assassination attempt of the Jewish people? And yes, I accuse, just like Emile Zola wrote, j'accuse. I'll tell you who I accuse. First of all, I accuse my own government and my own army that didn't do anything to protect these people, that didn't give them weapons. They should have had guard duty. They should have had a fence around them. Those babies deserve to have defense, and they were not defended. And I'm not blaming the victims ever, but the government, the IDF, the security, our Minister of Security, who is completely ignorant of how to do anything to do with security, since he never went to the army. You don't put in charge of chickens a toothless monkey, but you put in guard of your dear children a very vicious guard dog. And we had no guard dogs, no Rottweilers, no pit bulls to guard those poor children, no fences. People in South Africa or New York City, all kinds of places where there's a lot of violence, they have special homes. People in Tel Aviv, most of them have apartments where you can't come unless you know the code. And these people were completely exposed. So this is the first persons I blame. And it's not political. The problem is that the left took a ride The posters that the Hamas, they don't have creativity. They took it from the left. I've torn down posters showing the Prime Minister Netanyahu as a vampire. I've torn those posters in Ramat Aviv, in North Tel Aviv. I tore down these posters accusing him because it's not fair to accuse the Prime Minister alone, because he's part of a mechanism. He's part of a government that led to this tragedy. Now this has to end. I will never ever vote for the for the current government. Unfortunately, we don't have an alternative, because the left is definitely not an alternative, because they're still in a delusional thought that the people of Gaza are innocent bystanders. When they kidnapped Shiri, Zichronah Livracha, Hashem Yinkom Dama, and Ariel Kfir, Zichronam Livracha, and they kidnapped them, the civilians. And then they stand there with their babies in their snugglies, their clothes. They look well-fed, they get humanitarian, they get tons and tons of food. They don't even have to go to work like you and me, or you or me. They don't have to go to work. They get humanitarian help. So they have everything given to them, and then they're part of this disgusting Satan cult, which people in the West participated in. So now I blame everyone who demonstrated for them. And the police in every Western country that allowed this and did nothing to stop these disgusting terror supporters that are no different than 9/11. No different at all. There is no difference. The ideology is the same. They see the Jews as part of the West. And it's so sad because the West doesn't see the Jews as part of the West. Jews are not considered white. According to every white supremacist group, Jews are considered exactly the same as Africans or Muslims or any minority group. And yet Jews are targeted for whatever reason. Whether they're rich, whether they're poor, whether they're defending themselves, whether they're victims, Jews are always targeted. This is the worst case of anti-Semitism the world has epidemic. Sweden, Norway, England, US, Canada, even New Zealand, even freaking New Zealand demonstrates with hate against Israel and support of terrorists who danced around the coffins of baby and a child, and the children are cheering on. The children don't understand. They say, if you cheer on the stage, you get candy. Children are easy to manipulate. Sadly, I've seen in Israeli kindergartens children chanting terrible slogans against the Prime Minister, and that is poisoning them. Every form of political hate is poison and toxin. I can't disagree with the Prime Minister and the government, but to teach a child to chant hate messages to the Prime Minister, to teach children that they should hate religion, they should hate, there's so much hate. So, and the Hamas is not original. They copied from the extreme left in Israel. So this is who I blame. Maybe these are the people I foremost blame. The Haaretz paper, which I read for cultural reasons, publishing hate, messages of hate, feeling sorry for the people of Gaza. Well, they had no problem kidnapping children. All these stores here, they give Arab jobs. They run supermarkets. They have jobs. They have better jobs than Jews sometimes. They have every opportunity in Israel. And they'll have lawyers defending them if God forbid anybody should prevent them from work. I, on the other hand, have no one to defend me or protect me when I'm discriminated against because of age, or I'm overly educated for a job and I get minimum. No, the Arabs will never get minimum wage. They will get the best salary, the best conditions, and they'll never have to serve in the army or to do national services. In Europe, if you're a citizen, if you don't want to go to the army, you can do national service. They don't do national service. They don't go to hospitals to help the sick and the elderly. They just don't do it. And when they go to universities, they get special conditions. So this is the problem with Israel. forming a yes, it is an apartheid state. It's against Jews. It's against Jewish people because you don't get help here. If I don't have a job, I'll starve. Nobody will help me. But if an Arab has a problem, there's tons of lawyers, human rights lawyers, who will help and defend him or her. This is a completely distorted view of what a citizen in a country should do. All citizens should be held to have the same duties. And there's a whole population here, whether it's ultra-Orthodox Jews or whether it's Arabs, that do not have to serve in the army. Well, I and my children have to serve in the army, but we don't have any privileges. There are a lot of people here, a lot of money, that spend money on making posters that demonize Prime Minister Netanyahu and give the inspiration for all these Nazi terrorists to make posters. Where do they have the money to print out those posters? That's what I want to know. Where do they have money for the posters? Humanitarian help and the Red Cross. How nice of you to come and take the coffin. And another matter is, why on Saturday? Did you notice? I try to keep the Shabbat, but I really need to speak out. So I said, for me, it's I have to speak out. Why on Saturday? Why on Saturday? Why desecrate our rest day? Do they work Sunday to Friday, and on Saturday they have the time to return the bodies? It's completely to make a mockery of Israel, to make a mockery of Judaism. They make a mockery of us, and the extreme left is an inspiration for them and gives them material. And they use it in a horrible psychological warfare of terrorists, using the left to... I've seen people attack rabbis. Here in Dizengoff Square, I've seen a rabbi whose wife and daughters were murdered. He was attacked, and the boys that came with him were attacked for holding a Jewish prayer in this square. And I would stand and defend him with... Over my dead body, people will attack a rabbi in my country. Over my dead body, people will desecrate the memory of, I don't know, I'm just losing my track of thought at the moment. The problem is that people here are so neutral. It's they think they live in Switzerland. They don't have any stance. They are very easily manipulated. If the newspaper says that religious people are Satan, they'll repeat it. They'll repeat it to their children. They'll do everything so the children grow up without any religion, without any gender. We are copying the crazy left of America. Hospitals are giving transgender operations to teenagers. A grandfather told me his 12-year-old granddaughter is undergoing whatever shit it's called. They give hormones that will mutilate her body. So I absolutely point the finger to Israel. We should have defended ourselves. We should have known who we are. You should raise a child to know who his identity is, and not raise them to chant slogans, as I heard my neighbors teach a child before Passover. Instead of teaching him the 4 questions, they're teaching them to chant political slogans that spread hate. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of the kidnapped people being kidnapped by the extreme left and them serving as an inspiration for the terrorists. Every poster I've seen is exactly the kind of posters I've taken down in Ramat Aviv, in North Tel Aviv, when I walk my dog. Now I'm going to the synagogue to pray because I'm a Jewish person and I know who I am. And my identity is not neutral, nor is my gender. You cannot change my identity, and you cannot change my gender. And you make Trump out to be a Nazi. I just saw a YouTube where, this is just like Nazi Germany. No, it's not. Yes, The Nazis attacked transgender people, but this is not the same. Transgender are the one who are attacking and infiltrating sports and education, confusing teenagers and calling castration gender reassignment and making it sound like a party. Oh, you can be a woman. No, you can't. You can't. Castration is not a pretty process. It's painful, probably. Can't even imagine it. And these transgenders are the very ones who support the leftists because they think they're all in the same boat. And in a way they are. And if you think that Trump is a Nazi, I'm not saying he's a wonderful human being, but at least he knows a few things are not going to be swayed by all this transgender bullshit. You want to love a man, you're a man who loves a man, go ahead. But don't castrate people and call it gender reassignment. And don't pretend to be a woman when you never will be. Thank God for Blair White on YouTube. I can't even post comments. They tell you which pronouns to use. They control everything. And they don't allow you to be religious. And there's a difference between a religion that celebrates life and a religion that celebrates death. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I'm about to enter a synagogue. I will respect it and not film there. I just want to inform everybody who doesn't know it's all connected. It's all connected. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And I hope the crack, that my words will form a crack in the ignorance, the big ignorance in this world.